If Britain was under attack from an enemy state like Russia, is the draft a daft idea? Well, General Sir Patrick Sanders doesn't think so, and our soon-to-be GB News colleague Boris Johnson doesn't think so either. Let's see what...
Sir, Lance Corporal Johnson reporting for duty and responding to the appeal from General Sanders for a citizen army and encouraging young people across the country to think of the attractions, advantages of some kind of military training or service, because at the moment they think it's either uncool or unethical, or perhaps they're not following General Sanders, they're following Colonel Sanders. To find out what we need to do about it, read my column in the Daily Mail.
And I read it. That's the spirit, Boris. But it seems that Boris and I are in the minority, because only 17% of Brits would happily fight in a war if Britain ever went to war. 14% say that they would fight only if they were forced to. And the majority, 30% of us, would try any means possible not to fight at all, whatever happened to our great British Blitz spirit. Look, this just isn't sustainable in the modern world. As we enter a more dangerous phase in history, we've got to be prepared for what the future might bring. Look, no one wants a war to happen, and God forbid conscription should ever happen, because I'd be absolutely useless. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't prepare all the same. Look, as we enter this new phase of international relations, we've got to be prepared. Our allies like Norway, Sweden, France and Israel all have national services. I think we should bring that back. I also think that we should forget about tax cuts in the upcoming spring statement, because actually that fiscal headroom should be used for additional defence spending. We've taken a lax approach to defence in the West. We've become far too complacent with peacetime. Instead of contemplating the realities of what hot war might mean, instead we're focused on fighting the anti-woke or the woke culture war. We're just completely detached from the realities of the international situation that we're currently in. I would support conscription as a last resort for this country if we absolutely needed it. But first of all, we do need to sort out our defence problem. The reality is we've become complacent with peacetime, and we need to start planning for the future. And that means increasing our military budget. That means starting a new national citizenship service. And that also means being up for conscription if it ever is called upon the great British people. Benjamin Butterworth, would you be up for conscription?
Well, obviously, if there was a war, then that would be a totally different scenario. And of course, I would fight for my country without hesitation. But there isn't a war, threatening Britain at the moment. And so I think this idea that we should somehow have national service from people who like to talk about we didn't win the war for this, who didn't actually fight in a war at all because they're not 95 years old, I think that's preposterous. The idea that we would take millions of people out of the economy, out of education, to go and practice in the army, the idea that we would suddenly find the billions of pounds that a programme like that would cost, I think it's for the birds. And I think a lot of it is just trying to reminisce about the old days for the sake of it, when it's actually no use to Britain. I'm much prouder that we have lots of people going to university, and I think we should spend that money on getting 50% of people in university places, not teach them how to fight.
Belinda, this isn't for the birds. France are introducing national service, Sweden have a national service, Finland have a national service, Israel have a national service, and thank God they do, because at the moment they're being put to work. This isn't for the birds. We should be following what other countries do, surely.
I agree with you totally. And Benjamin, you saying, it's about the old days. Well, what's wrong with learning from history? I mean, history teaches us that having a bigger army actually acts as a deterrent in the first place. And listen, I may be a ripe old age, but I would sign up at the drop of the hat to join an army and defend this country if it was under attack, because these sceptred isles are so much more precious than the flim-flam wet white governments that we have in and out of season. It's so much bigger than that. We owe it to our ancestors to defend the country. And I don't blame people for feeling despondent and sad at the continuous relentless attack on Britishness, our values and our culture. and having in government a party that won't even defend our borders, won't even defend, our British curriculum being taught at school. And so it has demoralised people in this country. But I say, fear not, stick to the path of defending and feeling love and patriotic about your country.
Have we become complacent, Darren? Because since the year 2000, we have seen the Navy shrink, we've seen the Army shrink, and we've seen the RAF shrink. I mean, the entire British Army, the active British Army, could fit in Wembley Stadium with space.
Well, it's absolutely terrible. I mean, Benjamin says we need to get more people going to university and not in national service. That's exactly the problem. We've turned people into Benjamin Butterworths instead of people that are actually,
educated and contributing to the economy.
Oh, educated in what?
God forbid.
Marxism and all the rest of it. Oh, that's brilliant. It's doing a real service to Britain. We're really ready for war. I mean, the Telegraph report tonight that there is utter disbelief in the Royal Navy because they're redeploying officers, viewers won't believe this, redeploying officers to diversity and inclusion teams. Now, that, to me, suggests, and I have to disagree with you, Albie, in what you said about culture wars being fought instead of fighting actual wars, right? Because the culture wars are preventing us from being ready to fight actual wars. So that's what I think is a real detriment to the nation's national security.
But Nana, we've seen the military be cut in numbers since the year 2000. I think that predates any culture war that we've been having over the past few years. Do you think it's fair, what Darren has just said?
Well, I mean, if you think of what Putin said, that's why he's laughing at us, because we're more worried about being called a he or a she or
really?
That
that's really what you think?
He did. Look, sign me up. Nambo, here I come. I can see it. I can see it now. I've got, like, the bullet sort of belt across. I've got the things. I've got my stilettos. When my stiletto goes down, boom, there's an explosion. I would be well up for that, But I do think national service needs to come back. I have literally, I don't know what Benjamin's talking about, because I think it's absurd if we think that we're just going to all sort of pick up our arms and suddenly all start fighting. We won't, as you said, Benjamin. You don't know what you're doing. What good would you be? No, that's the point. We need some sort of training to get the young people who are carrying the zombie knives and all that nonsense off the streets, out of the gangs, off the county lines, and actually focusing on some sort of cohesion. Because we have a mass immigration problem with people coming into this... Sorry, I'm not finished. So multiculturalism has failed because we've got pockets of...
What's this got to do with multiculturalism?
This has got... The point
National unity.
Listen, that's it. I was getting there until I was interrupted. But look, multiculturalism is like lots of little ghettos of pockets of people who do not unite and form. This will bring a lot of young people together. You come to this country, you want to be British, you've got to do something for it. And you do your national service, you earn your citizenship.
Benjamin, don't you think that is a reasonable thing, national service, to bring the nation together as well as prepare us for war?
But you say this, but this is having had a period of Tory government where things like community centres and youth clubs have been shut down en masse. Those are the kind of things that brought a lot of those young people together. We've seen education failing some of the poorest communities in this country. Those are the kind of places that are meant to set boundaries. And the fact is that, it is a farcical idea that we take millions of people out of the economy to go and do national service.
Sweden do it, Finland do it, Norway do it, Israel do it.
Israel is under direct attack. It has been for the entire 75 years of its existence.
They didn't suddenly rack up a civilian army, as you're suggesting. They had people ready, which is why, if you watch their war effort and how hard they're fighting, they are coordinated, and they understand war.
And if I were an Israeli citizen, I would agree with it, because they have a totally different scenario to the one we have.
But why can't
I think
we
it's
change?
preposterous to say that we all have to go and train in the army. I mean, half of us here would be utterly useless, frankly. Where there is a good idea is that maybe people that have gone down the criminal route, who've gone down
what is a good idea is that we actually need to move on now, unfortunately.